comparative statistics, that language doesn't allow itself into an infinite mindset. So it's easy when we're constantly being thrown rankings and leaderboards and how much are you writing, et cetera, to think that's what this opportunity is.
Welcome to the Trained Well podcast. I'm your host, George Elossais, and today's guest is Peyton Pettus, a Georgia-based insurance agent who runs 3 high-performing offices with a 35-plus person team. He's been ranked top 10 in the largest captive insurance company multiple times with multiple offices. He's the only agent I know of who has a CEO role where he isn't the CEO, and because of that, he is known for a team first, systems driven culture. Peyton also ties recognition to memorable experiences through Rome custom travel and tracks ROI on incentives like a hawk. We're going to dig into how he builds leaders, engineers incentives that actually move the needle while staying profitable, and how he scales without losing culture. Peyton, welcome to the show. Of
Thanks for having me, George. I appreciate it, man. Honored to be here.
course. Well, I always start with maybe this simple or maybe not so simple question of you were born, now you're here. What happened in between? What's your story?
Gosh, I know, right? I have no idea. Um, still looking back on that one, man. So have had a lot of fun in my career as an insurance and financial services agent. So obviously, had family that were in the business that got me going down that road. When I graduated from school, I was really kind of on the finance side mentally. So was interviewing with when I graduated from UGA, interviewing with companies like Mass Mutual, Northwest, Schwab, et cetera, wanting to go that route. So was just super thankful to pair up with a company that was going in the financial services realm. So that kind of matched up with where my mind was going, and then just the ability to be an entrepreneur, man. So I'm married. My wife Angie and I have been married 26 years. We're both in our early 50s. We got 2 kids, Dallas and Sydney. My son just graduated from UGA and he's engaged to be married next May. And then my daughter, Sydney's
Congrats.
is a junior over at UGA. Yeah, thanks, man. We're super proud of him. My son's an aspirant in my office right now, and so as he's kind of doing some wedding planning and things like that, he's off to a really good start and getting his securities licensing. So we're excited for that as well.
So, did you always know that you're going to be an insurance agent?
I did not. No. I think at the end of the day, I think I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I'm not sure I would have defined it as an entrepreneur, like as a 22, 23, 24-year-old graduate, but I just, I had a situation where I got in and was working for a tough manager, and I was working for like promotions every 6 months that were small in nature, and somebody else was in charge of that. And my wife, it's kind of funny story. My wife graduated about 18 months after me and got on with somebody like a really good manager in the same field, same company. And within like 6 months, she was making more money than me. And that never sat well that somebody else was in control
Sure.
of my income like that. So yeah, when I had the opportunity to branch out and do my own thing, absolutely. Yeah, just the freedom, the independence of the opportunities, what led me to that.
Well, and most insurance agencies might have anywhere from 3 to 5 team members. Some have even less. But obviously, you've taken it and gone much, much further. We're 3 offices, 35 plus employees, maybe even more than that now. Did you always know you were going to go that route of going that big, or what do you think? What were some of the factors that led to that?
Yeah, I didn't start out that way, George. I think I started out kind of playing the games and trying to qualify for the 3 Ps, the pins, plaques, and promotions. And so I got into that game thinking that's what we were supposed to do. I come from a Marine family, and I have 2 older brothers, and we were all competitive and all played sports at a relatively high level growing up. And so I just know I wanted to compete and try to win. So it took me 3 or 4 or 5 years really before I got in and met a coach and some mentors that were like, listen, you got to start building this thing as a business and think about ROI and scale and delegation and trusting others, et cetera. At that point in time, I just was really lucky to be centered around some people that grounded me and gave me some good advice and some good guidance. So yeah, I'd say like that third, fourth, fifth year in, I thought, okay, if I want to, you know, maybe have a mentality of grow a team member per year, I thought that'd be a good mentality to kind of stretch me every year. There wasn't really any math behind it other than that it would stretch my goals and my mindset each year. And so we started on that journey, and that actually worked out pretty good. And then obviously we got to points where we'd get some financial windfalls with bonuses and different things like that, where we really would do some heavy reinvesting into team and marketing and ramp up and add three or four or five at a time and things like that. But that took 15 years for really to me to get into that headspace to do that.
Well, and sometimes, you have those windfalls, maybe you have a really good, like, annual bonus,
Hmm.
and you got that money, but sometimes, like, even for me, I'm like, "I could just hold on to this. It could be my money." You know?
Absolutely.
What gave you sort of the courage, or, like, why were you like, "I'm just gonna keep reinvesting. I'm gonna just keep putting it in the business," just for sort of like, delaying the payout?
Yeah, man, I was super blessed to get invited to a study group, a non-industry specific study group in my seventh year. So it was called the 12, and there was a lot of really, really high powered, high wealth individuals in that class. I had no business being in that group, but man, they changed my perspective on how to run a business. Really didn't have anything to do with it, like an insurance business, so to speak, but they were all gosh, in manufacturing and logistics and retail and food. And so nothing to do with insurance and financial services, but when they learned a little bit about my business at the small level that I was compared to them, they couldn't believe that I hadn't spent the last 6, 7, 8 years like expanding my team because of the margins that were involved with residuals. Because they obviously January 1st of every year, all those fields and those vocations I just mentioned all have to start over, which we don't. And so they were super jealous. They're like, man, if we were you, we would have 1,500 team members. We'd be a small Geico at this point, whatever. Just that mindset kind of stuck with me. Like, man, that makes sense. If I can figure out how to scale with making a little bit of profit and forego taking and maybe live within my means a few more years, which was hard to do because everybody around me was going well above. So, I think it's just the competitive side. I mean, that wanted to do something different, maybe that I didn't see many agents doing nationally. That I've seen some big agents, but you still see kind of a stopping point or a harvesting point where they're like, okay, we're at a point now where we got to harvest some of the residuals, et cetera. I think there's some balance there where you can continue to have a growth minded, you know, focus or a mindset the entire career. So that's what we went for.
Yep. Well, it seems like the next stopping point is maybe, like, 8 or maybe, like, 12, and then
Right.
some people really start to stop there too. Why do you think some people stop there? Maybe, like, when you're at that point, what were you thinking?
I think it's peers. I think it's all the people around us. Because we don't know any better, right? We get into districts and territories of like 50 or 100 or 250 in these areas and we start thinking finitely, which, I've read a lot of books on just infinite mindset. And infinite mindset doesn't know any caps, doesn't know rankings, comparative statistics. That language doesn't allow itself into an infinite mindset. So it's easy when we're constantly being thrown rankings and leaderboards and how much are you writing, et cetera, to think that's what this opportunity is. But if you step outside and think of yourself as like a Chick-fil-A franchise, for instance, like when I opened up my second office, I took like my two best players at my first office and put them over at the second one and didn't man it up to the same scale and wondered why the production wasn't there for 2 or 3 years. Well, it's because I took my main players out and didn't invest in the business like I did my first business. It just that cheap mindset that we don't know until we know. But you would never open up a Chick-fil-A franchise with two or three people and just hope that it outproduces the first Chick-fil-A. So
For sure.
yeah, just that kind of mindset, man.
Well, and obviously to run it your size, you're always hiring, recruiting. You've done a lot of hiring, recruiting. What are you? looking for in those candidates that, like, they're gonna be right for your office? And is there anything that you just know right away, like, "This isn't gonna work. I'm not even gonna, like, bother hiring them?"
Yeah, and I think that has changed and I've adapted throughout the years, right? Um, obviously we use CTS and CTS profile and I like it because it's really strict. I like it for the reasons most of my peers don't like it because it's strict. So I have a lot of volume and commit a lot of dollars to hiring, number one. So that's a line item on my operating account. But deadline motivation is always the trump card. If I've got folks that are motivated by deadlines because this is a deadline business, that's a good kind of a trigger point that they might have the giddy up to be pretty successful in this business. But man, I really want all of the core principles in that CTS. The one I'm leaning on heavily now, and you mentioned Rome earlier, is recognition drive. I used to not pay too much attention to it. Because I'm not really driven by recognition. I appreciate recognition, but it's not my main driver. So I probably didn't focus too much on it. But man, the new culture, and I think the last generation, these next couple of generations are very much recognition based from all the research that we're seeing. So we look for real high recognition culture, plug them into Rome so that we can allow them to play a part in what's motivating them and then to tie a metric to that. So that's been really successful the last couple of years. And then I just want really good people too, man. Like that believe in others. That's another metric that gets taught on that CTS that comes out. Like that belief in others means like they're willing to be coached. If they don't have the humility and the the self-awareness to go, hey, this person's investing in me and I need to kind of listen more than talk and to receive coaching in a right way. I think that it's a characteristic that we've lost probably over the years. So it sticks out like a sore thumb when I can find somebody that really enjoys and likes coaching. So we tend to pay attention to that too.
No, I think that's a huge one because I mean, if people obviously have like an inherent disbelief in others, right, and they
Yeah.
like kind of think negatively of others, they're probably not going to learn well. They're probably not going to be great working with customers because I think the customers, whatever feeling about them, if they don't go with the recommendation, it might tear them down. So yeah, no, I totally get that because we've even had people that apply and like they'll apply and maybe they don't do well on their scores on the on the tests that we do, kind of like you, and then we'll send them that decline email and then they'll like tear us down and then also demand an interview and you're like, boy, I think the process worked on that one. They couldn't handle the rejection piece, right? Because clearly they just had like a negative belief in other people. So
Absolutely.
no,
Absolutely.
yeah, those pieces together, I definitely see it. Do
Big
you
deal. I
have
mean, like entrepreneurial spirit, we're obviously looking for if we've got folks that want to be the business owners. I mean, that's an easy one to hunt and look for, but it's not in every one of them. So it's a 5% hit there. So yeah, and then just high attitude, really, really positive people. Try to surround myself. The further I get in my career, the more I don't have the time to be centered around people that are going to be negative. So it's just we tend to steer away from that.
sure. Well, and you were talking about how, like, you've evolved, like, in your experience, maybe hiring 20 years ago to hiring now.
Hmm.
Is, like is the market different now? And, like, w some people like, some people are like, "Oh, everybody has a short attention span nowadays, it's hard to sell to them," but then people will happily plug into a Netflix show for 8 hours straight, so, like, maybe it isn't the
Right.
attention span.
Right.
Do you feel like hiring's always been the same, people are the same, maybe just with like a modern wrapper? Or are there some like key differences now that you kind of have to approach them a little differently?
That's a really good question that I probably haven't dove that deep into. I still think core traits are the same. I just am a believer in that. I think that the delivery of people's core traits have changed. So, and I try to be mindful of that, right? I think sometimes I pay less attention to like an interview delivery because of communication differences, things like that, right? The easy stuff to point out, okay, communication differences, there's some new generational things that maybe that's not as natural for people and that's a trait that they might need to grow into or might
Sure.
not, who knows? Might not
Yep.
need as much communication ability in the future. So that, again, might be something else to adapt to. But yeah, I think you kind of hit it. It's more like the packaging of people
Mhm.
is what I see that's different, how they represent themselves, how we represent themselves as a culture to them. I still the cool part is I still think people want to be social and want to be included with others, right? I do have a remote team that's out there, and that's right for some people, but most of my team members, I think if you give them the choice and the same comp plan and the same everything else, that they want to be around folks and in a situation where they can thrive and grow off each other and learn from everybody's mistakes. So, that's the type of people we're shooting for to bring on the team for sure.
Yep. Do you think there's any, like, specific personality types that you would point to or maybe, like, specific roles where, like, someone would be better remote or better in person? Or is it more of just, like, you're kinda just feeling it out to make that decision?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to test work ethic, it'd be nice to have like just a work ethic test because that just usually answers most of the questions. So we try to have like some just really transparent conversations on the front end. Especially if we don't know and we don't have some experience with the candidate to go on, we try to just really walk through some transparent scenarios of work ethic and what they expect from this opportunity. I mean, how many hours do they expect to put in?
Yep.
What compensation do they expect? What's the roadmap that they see for their success? Not what we see as an expectation for their success, but and then we try not to put our thumb on folks, man. I'm at a point now at 26 years in, I just don't want to like completely micromanage folks. We definitely want to manage people and develop, but I'm out of the micromanagement game. I'd rather just
Mhm.
be like, listen, our expectations are that you expect really good things out of yourself. In fact, great, uncapped, infinite type things. And if you can get in that mindset, then we will jump behind you. And not only will we jump behind you, we're going to like invest in you as you go. I
Yep.
mean, who's going to say no to that?
For sure. And I mean, you've got a lot of team, you got a lot of things going on right now. What's sort of like your like org chart? How's it all like set up? I know earlier like, you have like a CEO who I've spoken to many times. He's like very smart guy. I love talking to Michael. But yeah, what is that sort of like Payne Pettis agency like org chart for you right now?
Yep, it's all over the place, constantly changing. No, I think we settled in because of some of the changes, the system changes in the industry that are just kind of we're having to adjust on the run right now until we get on the other side of it. But I would say my role is going to be what I would call an investing partner. And I think that's the mindset of every team. So everybody on my team, whether they're in leadership, production, service, I think is telling themselves, am I investable to Peyton as my investing partner, number one? And I think that's a good place to start their career and carry that mindset. So if they're investable in doing the things, then I think it's an easier ask when they come and they need something or vice versa. So anyway, Mike's, so I tend to handle IPS high level cases and then managing my leadership, which are three people. Mike, my CEO, which is he's really more CEO, CFO now. So over the financial side of the business, financial decisions, hiring and firing, promotions, comp plans, and then he'll do high level production as well. So your IPS, he's advisory, and then your high level life cases. And then I've got two folks that are what we consider kind of branch managers or agency code managers that are in charge of the production that comes out of those agent codes. So training as it's involved in like production. Um, and so that we've got that layer along with a customer support manager that's really in charge of a team of 6 to 7 folks on how they're delivering that customer experience from A to Z. And we're constantly adapting that too because we don't know what that's going to look like in 12 months. Um, and then from there, then we've got our, again, a mix of entrepreneurial kind of aspirant driven producers, long term producers that maybe don't have that entrepreneurial spirit, but still have a great opportunity to have a great career. And then the support team. So, and then remotes are mixed in there. So, we typically our aspirants are in office. We've got a remote team. I think of 8 right now. Those are typically going to be my long term producers. And then we connect everybody from a training standpoint. So at least 4 days a week, we're training and connecting everybody on the systems like they're in the office right next to you.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's huge. And like with all those people, and I really like you were talking about earlier, sort of your philosophy of like when you're bringing them in, like you're investing in them. And I think that's kind of like a nice idea for the person to be like, okay, he cares about me enough, so I'm gonna kind of like make the investment worth it, right? Like you're the partner. I love that, and obviously with, like, the people traits you're looking for, there's a certain culture you're after. But you know as well as I do, every additional hire, every layer of management, that culture or, like, initial vision can start to get diluted. How do you maintain it?
Man, that's a great question. And we probably fail more than we succeed there, honestly. I think it now, and I'm tough. I'm tough on myself and my leadership, but on these type things because we're always just concerned in a positive way. We're concerned with it. What's the culture? What's it like? What's the vibe? So I think it does change. I think you have to, at least we have found that we have to adapt with our culture depending on personality, etc. Now, again, core traits like honesty, integrity, work ethic,
Huge.
deadline motivation, those are never going to change. But I think there's some personalities that kind of ebb and flow where you might have a, kind of a high powered type A type of environment. You might have a more of a kind of an authentic service based environment, an empathetic type of environment. So I've seen it kind of go both ways. And I think we tend to coach the opposite when we have one. So we're trying to always like work on the weakness. So we try to find the strength of the culture and then allow the people that are enveloped in that culture to go, okay, what do you want to work on? What's your development? And then that actually becomes the culture. Like developing the weakness becomes the culture, if that makes sense.
Sure. No, that makes complete
So
sense.
we do
Okay.
all like the physical things, like the meetings and birthday recognition and anniversary recognition and any kind of timely recognition that we can do nonstop. We're great at it and we're on point. But at the end of the day, and we've got ping pong tables and dartboards and cool offices with music going nonstop. But that's not really culture, in my opinion. That's kind of superficial. That I think that's more hiring culture. But then when you get in, I think it's man, listen, if I'm going to go from 2,000 a person a month in marketing dollars to 4,000, or I'm just making like paraphrasing, to $4,000 per person per month in marketing dollars, wouldn't it make sense that it'd be okay for me to ask for almost double production if you're not at capacity yet? I mean, so we're real transparent about like that, like getting people to buy in, and so I think that becomes the cultures. What are we developing on? What are our weaknesses?
Well, and that kind of hits on, like, where I wanna go next, right? Because 'Cause you're investing in them and you want them to do well, but you've also done some pretty interesting things with, compensation or really, like, incentives, and now with your company, Rome, you're kinda bringing that to everybody. What was Rome before Rome existed, and how'd you get there?
Sure. Yeah. So, and just for clarification, Rome is my wife, Angie Pettus. It's her company. She's the founder and president. It started with we've been in the incentive business for a while at my office. Let's just call it like a decade, roughly. Maybe not that quite that long, but almost that long. Where we've thought about promotions, constantly promoting, whether it's quarterly, annually, whatever, to recognize the team. I think for the longest time, and then Angie, she obviously was in my culture, so she knows our culture and team, et cetera, and how we drive results, et cetera. She got into the luxury travel space and kind of understood that business for a few years and what that looks like and what like high concierge type of service looks like in that business. And then kind of saw what we were doing and we decided to try something new at one of our annual meetings. And instead of kind of coming up with the goals and saying, hey, this is where we got to go. We want to make this scorecard bonus and this chairman circle and this president's club. And here's the production go. And everybody's on the same metric. And if you qualify, you qualify. If you don't, you don't. That's kind of what we were doing. But we decided to allow the team members to play a part in actually deciding what motivates them. So not us telling them what motivates them or us saying, hey, if we qualify, you qualify. There's no transient like profit margin connection there. It's just kind of a hope. And so we went around to each one of them, allowed them to kind of come up with like it started out with just dream trips, travel trips. And they loved that. The buy-in process was great. And then we started kind of researching on the side. Okay, this kind of makes a little bit of sense because buy-in rate goes up at a high level if they're involved in the process of creating their motivation. So we saw our qualification rate go up because they were involved in that process and they were really dialed into the activities to get them the production to allow them the opportunity to qualify. So we were like, okay, we're on to something. Angie came in and was like, we got to package that. That's something that I think the company as a whole, as an organization, could really grow from and learn. So now they've now come full circle 2 years later after their pilot launch, and now have dropped a site that's really, really cool, very intuitive and custom to each owner and business owner. And so, and then it also just takes the travel component out. Because what we found is that after we started just saying, hey, travel, 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 that's what the promotion's going to be and what your motivation is going to be. We don't really care where you go, but it's going to be travel. Well, we found that some people weren't motivated by travel. They wanted time off, or uh, a drop in their 401k account, or a drop in their 529 plan, or buy the deck. At one time I had a guy with a zero turn lawnmower, whatever. Once we removed all the excuses of the kind of the why I didn't plug into the promotion, that site had a lot of relevance. Now it's just really about the site, um, creating motivation for each team member, and then applying a metric that it gets the ROI that we're looking for. So, so I think that's where we're at now, is we've removed a lot of excuses at the team member level, which is good. That's just good self accountability. We've also got this site now that becomes now the ultimate accountability metric in our environment. So if you think about it, if I'm like tracking life and health carryover credits, for example, that's one thing that's kind of taken off like wildfire nationally. If I'm tracking life and health carryover credits, and I've got a team member that like is not on pace to qualify in like October or September, whatever, well, shouldn't they technically be driving results or driving activity and focus and intentionality all the way through 12/31 to get credits for next year that they're going to bank towards next year's motivation, whatever that might be? So if I don't have that person, then is that really a person that should be on a sales team? It doesn't everybody in our culture have to be motivated. So again, I think we're using it now and leveraging it as an ultimate kind of an accountability tool, and that's pretty cool too. So yeah, long way to go, and we're figuring things out as we go as the data comes in, but it's exciting for sure.
Well, and one thing, because I initially thought this, I no longer think it because we have Rome, and I'm really excited. Like I know our team's very
Awesome.
excited about it.
Love it.
Um, but initially, right? I know I've heard this before. What do you say to the skeptics out there that are like, "Well, I'll just give them the money. Like I'll just pay. I'll bonus them the money. Like it's the same. I'm spending the same." What do you say to those guys?
Yeah, and first of all, I'm not ever trying to sell anything to I think we've all got our different flavor and variation
Sure,
of why we
sure.
do what we do, what makes us tick, right? And
Yep.
we've all got different market fluctuations, personalities, etc. So I think it's maybe just right for the right people. But having said that, I understand what you're asking. I think this is about like truly defining a recognition culture. And there's a book that was written called The Carrot Principle by Adrian Gostick years ago, right after the '08, '09 mortgage crisis. That's actually, it's not the best written book, but it's very, very factual, very cool. It's a group of scientists that studied companies that came out of that cycle very quickly and how they did it. And it wasn't a bunch of money, marketing, changes in hiring, etc. It was the folks that had like high level recognition programs, and they knew how to recognize their folks, both from a timely standpoint, monetary standpoint, et cetera, that came out quicker. And it was like a bunch of different industries. I think their focus was in the mortgage industry, but there's a bunch of different industries that showed the same results. And then at the end of the book, there's like 20 pages of like practical applications of things you can use to recognize your team. And I still use them to this day. My team does as well. And it could be thank you notes, timely. It could be, hey, got a Google review. We're going to recognize tomorrow morning in front of everybody in the meeting. It could be simple things like that. But you start thinking about like creating a culture of that, Rome then just automatically is the glue for the big stuff. And so I think the biggest worry really nationally that Angie's finding from agents is they don't know how to afford it. They're like, okay, well if my team member wants to go to Napa Valley for $7,500, how much production should I ask them
Right.
to
Right.
do to get the ROI? I mean, nobody
Yep.
knows. Here's what we have found is that this whole like the whole cost to this Rome thing is absolutely arbitrary. The difference between like a $3,000 trip and a $10,000 trip is literally arbitrary. There's so much cost that goes into the investment in our team that's not even funny. So again, if you break it down into an individual unit and divide it by like your total expenses in your office, your total marketing spend in your office, the salary of your team member, the commission structure of your team member, and then you put Rome in as a cherry on top, like it's an arbitrary number. When none of us are making any money until like the third, fourth renewal anyway.
Yeah,
They have yet to
right.
find anybody make like a return on their profit like in month 3. It just doesn't happen. So I think when you start thinking about it like that, it's like, well, why wouldn't I just kind of create a culture that's awesome to be a part of, where people have a say so and it's collaborative in nature, you know? And then take the cap off and give them just like we get levels of, travel, have them have 2, 3, 4, 5 levels that they can go, attack and just really take the cap off of somebody's production. So again, my ballers, my folks that want to go after it are really going after it. My middle group, we're just kind of coaching on, okay, why are we not there? What can we do to help develop and get you there? And then the bottom group are like, okay, did we miss? Was your motivation incorrect? What did we miss on the front end? So there's coaching along that spectrum all the way through.
Well, and I think what's also really interesting about this and about Rome is it's not just like, hey, here's a platform to use, right? So you actually help the agents by like figuring out what their team wants, what they're motivated by, because everybody's like, well, I don't, my team doesn't know what they want, right? Like, they don't know what they want. So like, how does like working with Rome work? Like, yes, there's a platform, but like, what's your like human side of it?
Yeah, sure. Like the practical side of it, after the agent speaks and shows interest, right, and they do a site demo, um, then I come in and I consult. So I've OBA'd the ability to consult. And so the consulting piece can take on different forms. It could be somebody that's like never qualified for anything and doesn't know where to start, or they've been there and they just need some ideas. Or again, like I mentioned, they don't know how much production to ask for. But really, it's team member centric. So the Rome team is developing a relationship with those team members and encouraging them on things. There's also port. There's a there's a tab in the site called the Rome Inspiration tab, which has hundreds of different like trips and things for them to get to thinking about what might inspire them or motivate them next year. Right, dream tip trip type stuff. If in fact travel is a motivator for them. So I think it starts with a relationship that the Rome team builds. Like they reach out to my team, like they're already starting now, looking forward to 2026 about what's going to be a good motivator so that we're ready for our annual meeting. So I think that's where it starts. And then again, we've got an ROI calculator built into the site. So that's what really kind of helps glue everything together. Like, okay, I've got a trip for $7,500. How much auto? Let's toggle over how much auto annually, how much fire, how much life and health, et cetera. And then what's my 5-year ROI residual run without any kind of bonus benefits thrown in there? Then that gives a little bit of breath of air to the agent to go, okay, I can invest in this. I also don't think it has to be perfect. I think a lot of folks that we're seeing, George, are wanting to be perfect, and hey, I want everybody to qualify. I'm like, man, we don't work for a company where everybody qualifies. This is an
Right.
incentive program.
Yep.
Incentive programs are meant to be a stretch, and so I think some of the coaching that I'm giving folks are, listen, I would take your best player, add 15%, and let that be the stretch and the benchmark for everybody on that team, assuming everybody's licensed. I think that's a good starting point as you go year to year. And then I will add that a lot of times we're doing some coaching on starting at the end. So starting with that bonus and being able to speak with leadership about, all right, what does it take from an agency to get to that statistic of that bonus, and then backing that data all the way in at the team member level as a starting point too. So there's different ways to go about doing it. Just depending on the intent of the agent or business owner.
Sure. Well, and I think, a good point to that too is so I've worked with, a lot of agents through my company. And sometimes when we're working on like compensation and incentives, they'll say, well, my team hasn't done that before. And I'm like, that's the point. That's the point. It's got to be a stretch, right? That's if you're doing what you're already doing, right? You don't need to pay them anything extra. You don't need to send
Right.
them to Napa.
And so
So,
if you remove all the excuses from the table and you let that person that's never done it before all of a sudden buy into when, who's going with them, where they're going, what they want to do while they're there, and you take the cap off, the chances of them buying in and going and getting it increase.
yeah, that's huge. Well, and the irony is, a lot of these agents work for a company that is doing the pins and plaques, they're doing the trips, there's catalog bonuses, there's financial bonuses, right? There's kinda like something for everybody,
Sure, absolutely.
and then that agent goes to their team and is like, "Why don't you guys want more money? I don't get it." And so it'd be the irony is, but that's where something like Rome comes in, and I know, like, again, I was a skeptic when we first did it, like, when our agency first signed up, I was like, "Money's money, like, we're paying the money, like, we're willing to do it, whatever." But then this one guy in our office was like, he had just bought a Jeep. He's like, "Well, can I get a bumper for my Jeep? Can I get a lift kit for my Jeep?" And
There
we're
you
just
go.
like doing the math. Like, what do well, we're just plugging it in. How do we get him the bumper? How do we get him the wheels, and like the lift kit? And then another guy was like, "Well, I want to do this golf trip in like North Carolina." Okay, what you know,
Awesome.
it, they're fine just getting all that. And now we have a good way to manage it because of Rome. So
It takes a
where
couple years to root, to your point too,
yeah.
George. I think it's not going to be perfect the first
Oh,
year.
sure. No,
We see
it's
that
different,
second or
right.
third. It took us a couple years to kind of
Yeah.
find the sweet spot of what makes sense for everybody and what a stretch goal is. What you'll find and what everybody on the call will find is that you get a couple years in and you're gonna have those team members that maybe didn't qualify for that level, and they're gonna go into that next year wanting to back up, and then the coaching has to be, hey, backing up, that's not the mindset. It's what's the development? What did we miss on? What do we keep coaching on and get so again, it just becomes an accountability metric at the end of the day and a culture thing more than a hey, qualify and get a trip. It's not anything chintzy. It's a culture thing. It's really cool.
Well, and that also, like you said, for the maybe the great producers that they don't really have the entrepreneurial spirit, that's a really
Hmm.
big retention thing. They just know, hey, if I have a good year, I can take my family on a trip, or I can fill up the college accounts, or whatever. They just know they have a place they can do that now,
For
when
sure.
before they may not have, right?
I
So
for sure. I had a team member that qualified for Italy last year, and we made sure when he got back that he had a full 20-minute conversation from the team about how good that trip was, right?
right.
And it inspired some people. So there's ways to certainly leverage it and have everybody win. It's okay when everybody wins.
For sure, for sure. So basically, where can people get more information about Rome and talk to your team?
Yep. They would just go to roamperformance.com and book a demo, and one of the Rome representatives would reach out and do a quick site demo and kind of find out what the goals are for the agent at that point and go from there. Very
Awesome.
easy. Yeah, 10
Cool.
minutes. If they like it, then they can fill out a questionnaire and rock and roll.
Perfect. And I'll leave you with this final question, Peyton. 2 to 3 books every insurance agent should read, and why?
Carrot principle, number one. So I'll go back to that one. No brainer. Adrian Gostick. I would say, oh man, the four disciplines of execution we're reading right now. I th- I've read it before, probably 15 years ago, but it's a complete refresher. My team, my aspirant registered reps are reading it right now, so it's good. So it's short for 40X is how they would search that. I would say that one for like disciplined execution simplicity. So for cultures that need a little bit of discipline and just for a small roadmap, there's four execution principles that are very easy to map out in that book. Um, and that's a classic go-to. Older book, but good. Think any other good ones we've read here recently. That's probably the two I'd stick with right now for simplicity purposes.
Sure, for sure. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time today. I know you got a lot of stuff going on,
My
with
pleasure.
your agencies. Your wife's got Rome, but I really appreciate you taking the time. And yeah, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, George. I appreciate it, man.